Picture a hospital room. The fluorescent lights are buzzing overhead. The air smells completely sterile.
Yeah, that unmistakable hospital smell.
Exactly. And right in the center of this room is a newborn baby who is just absolutely inconsolable.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, the baby is letting out that deep, breathless, frantic wail that, it instantly makes the shoulders of everyone in the room just tense up.
Right. It triggers that biological panic response in all of us.
It really does, and the context makes it even heavier because the baby's mother has just passed away right after giving birth.
Oh, wow. That is incredibly heavy.
So the nurses, the extended family, I mean, they are trying everything in their arsenal. They're rocking the baby, shushing, swaddling, walking up and down the halls.
Just doing anything to break the cycle.
Yeah, but nothing is working. A panic in the room is palpable. But then a man walks in. He isn't a doctor. He isn't a relative.
Okay.
He just reaches out, takes the infant into his arms, and simply holds the baby against his chest. And almost instantly, the crying stops.
That's amazing.
Right. The baby's breathing slows down to this calm rhythm, and then, incredibly, the infant actually smiles.
The visual is just so striking. And the reason behind it is really profound. Because this man doesn't have some magical touch or a superior swaddling technique.
No.
He's actually the organ recipient who received the transplanted heart of the baby's deceased mother.
It's wild. The baby is hearing the exact same rhythmic thud that it listened to for 9 months in the womb.
Yeah.
It's that incredibly specific, steady acoustic signature of absolute safety.
A literal biological haven.
Exactly. And welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking that visceral, highly emotional image and exploring how it serves as the foundation for a deeply fascinating essay from 2022.
Right, by an author named Su Feng.
Yep, Su Feng, translated by Kinyu, and the title is Let Our Souls Nestle in the Greatest Creator's Embrace.
It's a bold title.
It is. Our mission today is to look at how this author takes a viral medical anecdote and uses it to ask a massive, profound philosophical question, which is, what does the human soul actually need to feel safe?
And it is probably worth establishing right at the top that the source material we're examining today wades pretty deeply into spiritual and religious waters.
Very deeply.
Yeah, the author freely blends terminology, like using concepts like the greatest creator right alongside references to the ancestor of Buddha.
Right.
So our goal in this deep dive isn't to validate or endorse these specific theological views.
Absolutely not. We aren't here to take sides on the existence of a creator or the nature of the afterlife.
Right. We just want to analyze the mechanics of the argument itself.
Hmm.
We really want to understand this fascinating framework Shuofeng builds about human existence, our baseline existential fears, and the very specific places we seek ultimate comfort.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because starting an essay about complex theology with a viral video of a heart transplant is a very deliberate, I'd even say aggressive choice.
It definitely grabs your attention.
Really bypasses the intellect entirely. It goes straight to our most primal biology. By starting with a newborn, the author strips away all of the complex layers of adult life.
Yeah, you forget about your job, your political beliefs, your ego.
Exactly. A baby doesn't have a philosophy,
Yeah.
A baby only has raw sensory experience and this fundamental driving need for survival.
Right.
So when that baby hears the mother's heartbeat, it experiences a physiological return to the womb. It finds its ultimate haven. And the author is taking this biological reality and using it as a mirror for the entire human condition.
Yeah, the argument being made is that we never actually outgrow that infant state.
We just hide it better.
Precisely. Regardless of how old we get or how much money we accumulate or how sophisticated our lives appear on the surface, we are all operating with the exact same primal deficit.
Wow.
We are all continually scanning our environment, looking for that exact feeling the baby had when it finally stopped crying. The safest, warmest, and most comfortable haven.
Wait, so under the surface of all our daily routines, the author is basically saying we are all just cosmic toddlers crying out for a familiar heartbeat.
I mean, yeah, that's the core metaphor.
That's crazy. We go to work, we buy houses, we scroll on our phones, but the underlying operating system is just this desperate search for that acoustic signature of safety.
Right. The literal heartbeat the baby hears acts as a physical tether to survival.
Yeah.
And the author translates that into a metaphysical haven that we are all supposedly searching for without even realizing it.
And what does the author claim that metaphysical haven actually is?
Well, Shuofeng posits that this ultimate metaphysical haven is the greatest creator's embrace.
Okay.
The text suggests there is an innate structural pull within every single human being toward the divine.
So it's not just a conscious choice.
No, it's almost biological. Just as the baby's body knew exactly what frequency to listen for to feel a sense of calm, our souls supposedly have this built-in compass pointing toward this singular ultimate source of comfort.
So it's framed as a biological and spiritual inevitability.
Exactly.
But wait, if we all have this built-in compass, right?
Yeah.
And we are all desperately wired to seek out this ultimate haven, it creates a massive paradox. Well, we're built for comfort. Yet as a species, I mean, look around. We are plagued by anxiety, depression, and existential misery.
That is very true.
Most people do not walk around feeling nestled in a warm cosmic embrace.
No, they definitely don't. And the author actually addresses this disconnect head-on through a critique of human behavior.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the essay argues that the reason we don't feel that ultimate comfort is because we are constantly plugging our need for safety into the wrong outlets.
Ah.
We are frantically looking for the heartbeat in places where it simply cannot exist.
And the text gets incredibly relentless here, doesn't it?
It really does.
The author points out that no matter who you are, whether you're a billionaire CEO, a famous artist, or just an everyday worker, you are going to face the abyss.
Right. You will face moments of bitter, life-altering disappointment.
Yeah. You'll face the physical weakness and frailty that comes from illness, hopelessness, and ultimately you will face the absolute terror of your own death.
And to survive that terror, we naturally look for anchors.
We do. But the author basically systematically takes a sledgehammer to basically every earthly anchor we have.
Totally. Government.
Mm-hmm.
Unreliable. Wealth, status, fame. Completely useless in the face of the abyss.
I mean, the list is a thorough dismantling of modern society's priorities. Xu Feng basically catalogs the things we typically spend our entire lives cultivating to insulate ourselves from fear and just dismisses them as fundamentally defective.
Yeah, completely unreliable.
But I actually have to push back on one part of this list on behalf of anyone listening because it feels incredibly harsh.
Which part?
The author also includes family and friends in that list of unreliable havens.
Yeah, that's a tough one to swallow.
It feels bleak. I mean, holding your partner's hand in a hospital room or calling your absolute best friend when your life is falling apart, that is the very definition of a haven for most people.
Absolutely.
To call human connection unreliable just seems incredibly cynical.
It does sound cynical at first glance, but we have to examine the mechanics of capacity that the author is outlining here.
Okay, what do you mean by capacity?
Well, the text isn't suggesting that family and friends are malicious or that love doesn't exist. The argument is really about structural integrity.
Structural integrity.
Yeah. Why are your loved ones unreliable as an ultimate haven? Because they are susceptible to the exact same existential vulnerabilities that you are.
Oh.
Your family and friends also get sick. They also face moments of crushing despair. And critically, they also die.
So it's like, wow, it's like trying to use a drowning person as a flotation device.
That's a perfect analogy.
If you are both in the middle of a hurricane, grabbing onto someone else who is also fighting the waves might give you a momentary sense of solidarity,
Right.
but it doesn't actually stop either of you from sinking.
Exactly. When you are confronting ultimate existential fear, when you are staring down the reality of your own mortality, earthly things collapse because they are temporary and fragile.
Right.
A temporary anchor physically cannot hold a ship in an eternal storm. The capacity just isn't there.
Looking at it as a capacity issue actually unlocks a pretty profound psychological insight for our daily lives.
How so?
Just think about how much pressure we put on our romantic partners or our close friends to make us feel complete or entirely safe.
Oh, yeah. We ask a lot of them.
Right. If the author is right, and the terror of death and existence is an infinite weight, then expecting your spouse to be your ultimate haven means you are asking a finite, flawed, mortal human being to do an immortal's job.
That is a crushing burden to place on another person.
It really is. Recognizing that our earthly relationships simply lack the capacity to save us from existential dread might actually improve those relationships.
Let your spouse just be your spouse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Rather than demanding they be your savior.
And relieving others of that impossible burden is a direct consequence of this philosophy.
Yeah.
Because the text argues that since all earthly anchors lack this infinite capacity, there is only one force capable of eliminating the fear of death and neutralizing negative emotions.
And that would...
The author identifies this eternal concept as the ancestor of Buddha, or the greatest creator.
Okay, so if This divine comfort is the single structurally sound solution to our existential panic. It brings us to a massive hurdle in the text.
What's that?
Well, if it's the only thing that actually works, why hasn't everyone experienced it?
Right, the obvious question.
The author anticipates this skepticism, but the explanation isn't what you'd expect. The text doesn't rely on the usual religious tropes.
Oh, not at all.
It doesn't say people lack faith or haven't prayed hard enough. Instead, Shuofeng argues that people fail to feel the comfort because they haven't understood the, quote, principles of life and space-time, or the mysteries of life's reincarnation and transformation.
And the vocabulary shift here is highly intentional and really crucial to understanding the essay's architecture.
Yeah, it changes the tone completely.
It does. The author moves from the poetic language of souls and embraces into the rigid language of physics and cosmic law.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The author is treating spiritual enlightenment like structural engineering. Yes.
We get terms like greatest creator paired with ancestor of Buddha and then thrown into a blender with space-time. It's like a grand unified theory of theology.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
The author is proposing that the universe basically has a metaphysical source code. And if you understand the actual mechanics of how space-time and reincarnation operate under the hood, you unlock the result.
Right.
And that result is that all the positive elements of existence, health, joy, freedom, wealth, flow directly from alignment with the creator. Let's unpack the mechanics of how the author blends these concepts, because it explains the how and the why of this entire framework.
Okay.
The greatest creator is a term that typically implies a singular originating conscious agent, a very Western cosmological view.
Sure.
But then ancestor of Buddha and reincarnation imply an eternal, cyclical system of enlightenment and consequence, a distinctly Eastern view.
Right, they don't usually sit next to each other.
Exactly. By fusing them and then explicitly linking them to space-time, the author is arguing that the creator is not merely an entity sitting outside the universe making judgments.
The creator is the literal mechanical engine of reality.
Precisely. The divine isn't just a judge. The divine is the physics.
Wow, the divine is the physics.
Yeah, the creator operates as the fundamental physical and spiritual medium of existence. So, if the creator is the source of space-time itself, then spiritual suffering is no longer a matter of divine punishment.
What is it then?
It is a matter of physical friction.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. If you try to sail a boat against the fundamental current of the ocean, you are going to exhaust yourself, your boat will break apart, and you will drown.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You aren't being punished by the water, you are simply ignoring the mechanics of the current. According to the text, people suffer because they are sailing against the current of space-time. They are ignorant of the universal mechanics.
Grounding this in a listener's daily life completely changes how you process frustration. Imagine you experience a sudden, devastating job loss or a really difficult medical diagnosis. If your haven is built on your career or your physical body, that event basically destroys you.
The waves crush your boat.
Exactly. But if you view the universe through this framework where the creator is the underlying physics of space-time and reincarnation, then a job loss isn't some random tragedy that destroys your anchor.
Right, it's just weather on the ocean.
Just weather. The current itself, the fundamental mechanics of reality, remains completely unchanged. You stay nestled in the embrace because you understand the broader structural integrity of the universe.
And the author builds this incredibly tight, closed-loop philosophical system. You recognize your primal need for safety, you discard the fragile earthly anchors, and you align yourself with the cosmic physics of the creator.
It feels entirely resolved.
It does. But just as the reader settles into this paradigm, Shuofeng introduces a direct, modern counter-argument.
The WeChat debate.
Yes.
This is a brilliant narrative pivot. The author doesn't quote an ancient philosopher to challenge this worldview. They literally pull a quote from social media.
From WeChat.
Yeah. Shufa mentions reading a post on WeChat, the massive messaging app, which states, and I'll just quote it here, "The soul is difficult to live with a reliance. The ultimate enlightenment is to have no reliance. This is the inevitable path for every soul to ascend."
It is a complete structural inversion of the essay's core thesis.
Reading that WeChat quote, I mean, it sounds like absolute freedom. It sounds like the ultimate liberation from all burdens.
It really does.
But the author seems completely terrified of that idea. If the author is advocating for a desperate, clinging reliance on the creator, the WeChat poster is advocating for becoming an untethered astronaut.
Oh, that's an interesting way to picture it.
Imagine being on a spacewalk, right?
Huh.
And you unclip your carabiner from the space station. You are floating in the infinite void, completely free of gravity, completely unattached to any structure. That is the no reliance the quote talks about. But from a practical standpoint, the moment you unclip that tether, you are doomed. You have no oxygen supply. You are going to drift into the dark and die.
The astronaut analogy perfectly isolates the tension between these two spiritual paths,
Yeah.
because the WeChat, quote, represents a well-established philosophical tradition, echoing certain interpretations of asceticism or Buddhism or Taoism, which argues that attachment itself is the root of all suffering.
If you rely on anything, even a creator, you are vulnerable.
Right. Therefore, to achieve true ultimate enlightenment, you must cut every single tether. You must become a completely self-contained entity.
But the author's rebuttal to this idea of total detachment is pretty aggressive, isn't it?
Very. Xu argues that a soul absolutely must rely on the creator. The text uses its own organic metaphors to fight the WeChat, quote, stating that a soul without reliance would be like water without a source, a tree without roots.
Which leads to a fascinating ontological problem that the author poses.
It does. Xu questions whether an independent soul could even exist in the first place.
Right.
The text introduces the concept of the heaven, or the non-material world, which is sometimes translated as the antimatter world.
Okay, antimatter world.
Yeah, but the author is using this term not in the strict sense of particle physics, but as a structural description of the spiritual realm.
Got it.
The argument is that even the non-physical realm has rules and a source.
Right. If the creator is the literal source of the water, the engine generating the antimatter world and all reality, you can't just declare yourself independent of it and expect to survive.
Exactly.
You can stand on a cliff and declare that you are completely independent of gravity. You can shout it at the top of your lungs.
But the mechanics of the universe do not care about your declaration.
No. The moment you step off the cliff, you are still tethered to the ground. You will fall. The author is essentially saying the WeChat poster is stepping off a spiritual cliff, completely misunderstanding the underlying physics of the soul. I mean, how does a rootless tree draw nutrients from the antimatter world if it refuses to connect to the soil?
The author cannot comprehend a mechanism where a disconnected soul survives. However, what makes the conclusion of this essay so compelling is that after vehemently arguing that total independence is impossible, Xu does not descend into arrogance.
No, not at
The
all.
author does not claim to possess absolute, omniscient knowledge of the entire cosmos.
There is this really sharp pivot toward humility. The author brings up a famous Chinese proverb: there are mountains beyond mountains and heavens beyond the sky.
It's an acknowledgement of limits.
Yeah. The author basically says, look, maybe there are these totally untethered, independent souls out there. Maybe somewhere in the incomprehensible vastness of the cosmos, there is a mechanism for a soul to exist with zero reliance.
But then the author makes a deeply personal, definitive choice.
Right. Xu writes that regardless of what might be possible out in the deepest reaches of the void, for a soul like theirs, they dare not cross the line.
Yeah.
They acknowledge that beings have free will, but state they dare not overstep the rules. It is a conscious, calculated surrender.
The author looks out at the terrifying, unproven freedom of the infinite void, the untethered astronaut floating away, and actively chooses the safety of the tether.
They choose to remain nestled in the creator's embrace.
And it forces us to look at the central theme of the entire deep dive.
Yeah.
What actually makes us feel safe? Is it absolute freedom, or is it knowing exactly where we belong within a grander structure?
As we synthesize the layers of this essay, it really acts as a mirror for you, the listener.
It does.
When the fluorescent lights of your own life start buzzing and the noise gets overwhelming and you face a moment of pure existential dread, what is your heartbeat? What specific tether are you reaching for?
Are you throwing all your weight onto an earthly haven, demanding that your spouse, your bank account, or your career save you from the abyss?
Or do you recognize the fragile capacity of those things and find yourself relating to the author's search for a deeper, more structural anchor? It's the ultimate question of how we orient our lives. And I want to leave you with one final, lingering detail from the very last sentence of the text.
Okay.
After the author makes that definitive choice to stay safely tethered To remain nestled in the Creator's embrace, rather than seek total independence, they explain the exact reason why.
Right.
They write that the Creator's embrace is where I came from and where I am going.
It creates a perfect narrative loop.
It does. Think about that in the context of the frantic, crying baby in the hospital room from the very beginning.
Yeah.
When that baby finally stopped crying, it wasn't because it discovered a brand new sound. It stopped crying because it found the original sound.
The acoustic signature of its origin.
Exactly. And it leaves us with an incredibly haunting psychological question to mull over long after this deep dive ends. As we spend our entire adult lives desperately searching for safety, for success, for the perfect relationship, or for ultimate enlightenment,
Yeah.
is all of it just a subconscious, frantic attempt to return to the exact place we started?
If the underlying mechanics of the universe are cyclical, then the search for the ultimate haven might simply be the long journey home.
Something to think about the next time you hear a heartbeat. Thanks for taking the plunge with us.